I'm going to show you how to make this amazing air fryer falafel. Falafel is just one of the most amazing things. You can put it on a pita, you can eat it by itself, on rice, on salads. They are so packed full of flavor, and I'm super excited to show you guys how to make these. Every time I make them, my guests absolutely love them. My husband loves these, everybody loves these. So let's get started. I'm going to show you guys how to make these. Here's a little preview of what's coming up in this video. So don't worry if you don't actually have an air fryer, because I'm going to share with you guys some alternate ways to make these as well. These can be made pan fried, deep fried, baked in the oven, a bunch of different ways to make these. So don't worry if you don't have an air fryer, you can still make absolutely delicious, amazing, healthy falafels just like this. And we're going to top them with a nice little tahini sauce. So take a look at that. Ooh, so delicious. So here's the recipe for the tahini sauce. You can screenshot that or pause the screen if you want to make that for later to top your falafel balls. All right, let's get started with all of our ingredients. So I have 1 can of rinsed and drained chickpeas. I have 1 cup of chopped cilantro. I have 1 cup of chopped parsley. And next up, I have a tablespoon of dried dill. Now you could use a 1/4 cup of fresh dill if you have it. I just wasn't able to find it this time. I've got 4 cloves of minced garlic. Make sure those are large cloves. I've got 1 tablespoon of freshly squeezed lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of ground cumin. This adds so much flavor. And then I have 2 ingredients here. So I have a tablespoon of Himalayan pink salt and a tablespoon of baking powder. And then next here I have half of an onion, a large yellow onion. It was quite a large one in this case. And then I have some flour. So I'm going to be using half a cup of chickpea flour. However, you can use white all-purpose flour, whole wheat flour, oat flour, whatever you have in the house, that is totally fine. Now we're going to add all these ingredients to either a high-powered blender or food processor. So I'm going to add them in the Vitamix, and I'm just going to start with my fresh herbs, my onions, all of the other ingredients, and I'm going to put the chickpeas on top because those are going to push everything down so everything's not exploding all over the place, and so that we don't overly grind the chickpeas in the Vitamix. So I'm adding in my onion and garlic, of course. I'm going to add in my freshly squeezed lemon juice. You can use bottled if you don't have fresh, but fresh is always best. I'm going to add in my baking powder and my salt, and of course my dried spices like cumin. Again, 2 tablespoons might seem like a lot, but it adds a lot of flavor to these. I definitely recommend putting the full amount. And then I have my dried dill, and I'm going to top that off with the chickpeas. So I just find if you're using the Vitamix, it works best to put the chickpeas on top. And I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to start pulsing it. I don't want this to be like blended, super smooth, creamy. You don't want it to be like that. You want it to have a bit of a sandy, gritty, grainy texture. You still want quite a bit of texture to it, so be careful not to over blend it if you are using the Vitamix. So sometimes the food processor can be a little bit easier for this kind of thing. You don't have to be quite as careful, but you want it to be, all the ingredients to be really well combined, while, like I said, still having that sort of sandy, grainy, gritty texture, because we definitely want some texture to our falafel balls here. So I'm just using the little stick that comes with the Vitamix to make sure that all the ingredients are blending up as I'm pulsing this and just getting it to that perfect consistency. So you can see here, I'm going to give you a good look at how it is. It is fairly sticky still, and that is totally fine. You can see the consistency. There's still some like little tiny chunks in there. It is fairly gritty. And then I'm going to add in my flour. So don't worry if it's a bit sticky when you're removing it from the food processor or the blender, because we are still going to add our flour. So I have a half a cup of chickpea flour here that I'm going to add in once I get all of the mixture out of my Vitamix. Again, if you want to use a different type of flour, that's totally fine, like a gluten-free flour, oat flour. I mean, chickpea flour is gluten-free by itself, but all-purpose flour works. It is up to you. Now we're going to mix that all together. Now, depending on your mixture, if you're finding like there's still way too much moisture, you can add a little bit more flour, but be careful with that. Only add about a tablespoon at a time. You do still want these to be fairly sticky. They don't need to be overly dry. So if you do feel you need to add a little bit more flour, just be careful as you're adding it that you don't overdo it, because you don't want them to be too dry. So I'm just going to keep mixing until that flour is super well combined. And like I said, if you want to add a little extra, if you need to, go ahead and do that now. Now, once we've mixed this up, it is still fairly sticky. You can see the texture and the consistency there, but we do need to put this in the fridge. So you're going to put this in the fridge for at least 45 minutes. It needs to rest in the fridge. So I'm going to go ahead and place that in there for 45. Now, if you're planning ahead, you can leave it for a few hours, up to 24 hours in the fridge. That's totally fine. And my dog always gets a little chickpea. She just loves them. Okay, so I have left that. It's been about an hour. And now I'm going to start shaping my falafel balls. Now, since we're cooking it in the air fryer, I have my little air fryer tray here, and I don't have a spray. I'm just going to grease that up using a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. I am going to be careful to get in between all the grates there, because these can stick for sure. Like, you definitely want to grease this up quite well. You can get olive oil spray or even avocado oil spray, and that would work also. So now that that's properly greased, I'm going to start by, it's probably about 1.5 to 2 tablespoons per falafel ball, probably about 2 tablespoons at least. I'm going to start shaping these into falafel balls. I'm going to get about 12 to 15 in total. So you want to make them about the same size, each of them, so that they're going to cook evenly through all the way. They don't have to be perfect or anything, but you want them to be very similar in size. Now we're going to be putting ours in the air fryer, but these can be oven baked. They can be deep fried, which would be the traditional way, which is super delicious. They can even be pan fried or, shallow fried in a pan, which is also absolutely amazing. So in this case, we're cooking them in the air fryer, but like I said, there are options. If you don't have an air fryer, there are many different ways to cook them, and they are all amazing because falafel are just so delicious. So I'm just going to keep forming those balls and filling up my air fryer tray. Now, I couldn't fit all of my dough on there unless I wanted to overcrowd it. I have done it before where I've kind of overcrowded it and they didn't cook quite as evenly, so I may have to do it in 2 batches or just crowd them in there and hope for the best. So I'm just going to do them like this because I'm going to have those other falafel balls at another time. You can leave the dough in the fridge for a couple days and then cook them fresh if you wanted to do something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in the air fryer. I'm not going to flip them. They actually don't need to be flipped as long as there's room in between. So air fry at 375 for 12 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to start at 12 minutes and just see how they come out. Depending on your air fryer, depending on all of these things, we want them to be brown and crispy, but we don't want them to be burnt. So I'm going to go ahead and start with 12 minutes and then see how they come out. So it's been 12 minutes and look at that. They are perfectly browned. Now you could have drizzled a little bit of olive oil on top of them before they went in, if you want that little bit of extra crispiness or oiliness to them. Now, with this air fryer, with the grates, sometimes, yes, it does leave a little line on the bottom of the falafel, but to me, that's not a big deal because they're still in a ball shape and they're going to get crumbled up if you put them on a pita anyway, or broken in half with your fork. But you can see that, yes, that does happen. However, they are cooked perfectly evenly and they're not sticking too much to the tray because I properly greased it, which is great. And then we're ready to add on a tahini sauce, which is so delicious, but you can eat them just like this with a tahini sauce as a snack, lunch, appetizer, whatever you like. I absolutely love to eat them this way. So good. But what you can do also is you can put these on a pita. You can put them on top of a salad. I have a kale salad that I put them on top of, which is super delicious. So you can eat them any way that you like. And in case you missed it earlier and you wanted the tahini sauce recipe, it is just half a cup of tahini sauce, 1/4 cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice, garlic cloves, half a teaspoon of salt, and if you want, a little pinch of cumin. Time for the taste test. That is so delicious. You're gonna really taste all those fresh herbs. It's amazing. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching this video on how I make my homemade air fryer falafel. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, just make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below.